After I was honorably discharged from the Marines, I figured I'd had enough of combat zones, adrenaline spikes, and the constant dance with death. I wanted something quieter, steadier, a job where I could still use my training but sleep in, a bed that wasn't surrounded by sandbags. Civilian life, as it turned out, wasn't as simple as I thought. Most people saw me as damaged goods, too intense, too rigid, too military. That's when I found the ad. Night security needed. Remote location, high compensation, discretion required. It sounded sketchy, but the pay was more than generous, and I'd learned long ago not to question fortune when it came. I called the number, expecting a gruff voice or some vet-friendly recruiter. Instead, a soft, almost robotic female voice told me to show up at a warehouse on the outskirts of an unnamed town in the Pacific Northwest. GPS barely recognized the coordinates. When I arrived, a fog hung over the building like a curtain. It was a monolith of corrugated steel and reinforced concrete. No signs, no numbers, just a massive square structure sitting like an uninvited guest in the woods. A man in a gray suit met me at the entrance. He didn't give a name. "You're Derek Vaughn?" he asked, scanning me up and down like he was assessing more than just my resume. "Yes, sir. Former Marine. Iraq. 2 tours. No family, no dependents. Clean record. Good. That's what we need." That's what we need? The phrasing stuck with me. He handed me a sealed envelope. "These are the rules. Read them before your shift starts. At 10 p.m. Once you read them, you can't unread them." What kind of... Don't be late. Then he was gone, disappearing into the building like smoke. I sat in my truck, envelope in hand, unsure if I was being punked or recruited for some underground militia. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside were 10 rules, typed in bold black ink on old-school typewriter paper. At first, I thought it was a joke. Rules for night security. Site 13. Effective immediately upon first shift. Violations will result in immediate termination. Do not enter the south wing. No exceptions. If you hear knocking from the east wall, between 1:1.10 a.m., do not respond. Do not acknowledge it. Keep all lights off in the control room between 2:33 and 2:44 a.m. You may encounter a man in a janitor's uniform who is not part of the staff. If he asks for directions, ignore him. If he insists, run. If you see your reflection moving independently in any window, leave that floor immediately. Every hour, check the red door on sublevel B. Make sure it remains locked. Do not open it, under any circumstances. If you receive a call on the internal phone system and no one speaks, hang up. If the voice sounds like your own, unplug the phone. You will hear a lullaby at exactly 3:03 a.m. You must hum along. It does not matter if you know the tune. Do not stop until it ends. There is no 5th floor. If you find stairs leading to a 5th floor, do not ascend. Contact control immediately. If at any time you begin to remember events that did not happen, report to the safe room and wait until the feeling passes. I laughed out loud. It was the kind of thing you'd find on Reddit or some horror story site. Creepypasta, the kids called it, but the serious tone in the man's voice and the sterile look of the place gave me pause. Still, rules or not, I needed the paycheck. So at 9:55 p.m., I swiped my security badge at the front gate and stepped inside. The main lobby was vast and cold, lit by a few dim fluorescents that flickered like dying fireflies. My footsteps echoed across the polished concrete as I made my way to the security office, which was little more than a room with a bank of monitors, a coffee machine, and a chair that looked like it had survived a war of its own. At 10:00 p.m. sharp, a chime sounded and the monitors came to life. Each displayed a section of the facility: hallways, stairwells, supply rooms. Nothing looked out of place. I settled into the chair, sipping stale coffee and watching for the kinds of things that made sense. Trespassers, vandals, a raccoon maybe. The first hour was quiet. Then came 1 a.m. A soft, rhythmic knock echoed through the audio feed of the East Wing camera. 3 knocks, a pause, then 3 more. I muted the feed. I wasn't about to break rule number 2 on my first night. Still, something about the knock lingered in the air. It sounded practiced, not frantic, not curious, patient. At 1:40, I decided to stretch my legs. I passed a janitor's closet when I heard shuffling behind me. "Excuse me," a voice called. I turned. A man stood at the end of the hallway, holding a mop and bucket. His uniform was standard issue blue, but there was something off about his face, like he hadn't learned how to make human expressions. His eyes were too wide and his smile too straight. "Do you know where the South Wing is?" he asked. Rule number 4 flashed in my head. I said nothing and turned back toward the office. "I said," he began, but his voice pitched strangely, like a cassette tape melting in the sun. I didn't wait. I ran. Back in the security office, I locked the door and checked the monitors. The man was nowhere. Not on any screen, not in any hallway. Just gone. At 2:33 a.m., I shut off the lights as instructed. The control room became pitch black. Even the monitors dimmed to a dull red. For 11 minutes, I sat in darkness. Nothing happened. But at exactly 2:44, the power surged back on, and all screens flashed with static for 3 seconds. When they cleared, one screen showed a girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in sub-level B. There was no record of her entry, no previous footage. She simply was. She stood outside the red door. I grabbed my flashlight and descended. The silence in the stairwell was like stepping into a vacuum. When I reached sub-level B, the girl was gone. The red door, however, remained tightly locked. I checked it twice. It didn't even budge. At 3:03 a.m., back in the office, I heard it. A lullaby. Soft, sweet, and haunting, like something from an old music box buried in a child's room decades ago. My throat clenched. I hummed. I didn't know the tune, but I hummed anyway. The melody coiled around the room like smoke. When it ended, I realized my hands were shaking. The rest of the shift passed in surreal silence. By 6 a.m., the lights brightened, and a voice came over the intercom. "Shift complete. You are cleared to exit." Outside, the morning fog was lifting. Birds chirped as if none of it had happened. I climbed into my truck, the envelope still sitting on the passenger seat. The rules seemed less funny now. Over the next few nights, the rules became a rhythm. I followed them like a hymn, never deviating. Each night brought new anomalies. A second version of myself on the stairwell monitors. A locked door that hung open when I passed it. Whispers in the ventilation ducts speaking a language I couldn't place but somehow understood. Each rule wasn't just a precaution, they were safeguards. The only things keeping me tethered to reality. And slowly, I realized this wasn't just a warehouse. It was a prison, not for people, but for things that didn't belong in our world, and I was the warden. By the 5th night, I had settled into a routine that felt more like a ritual than a job. I clocked in, reviewed the cameras, patrolled the facility according to the schedule, and obeyed every single rule to the letter. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't just doing it for the paycheck anymore. I was doing it because I could feel the pressure, the thin, invisible line separating order from chaos here. These rules weren't just guidelines, they were the lock on Pandora's box. It was during one of my hourly patrols to check the red, docker on sub-level B, that I noticed something different. The girl was back. She stood farther from the door this time, nearly at the edge of the hallway. Same white dress, same blank expression. Her eyes tracked me as I approached. My stomach twisted into a knot. I stopped 10 feet away, flashlight steady in my hand. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, trying to sound calm. She didn't respond. Instead, she slowly raised one hand and pointed, not at the red door, but upward. I followed her gaze to a corner security camera mounted above. The lens was cracked, as if something had struck it from the inside. I glanced back at her. She was gone. Later, back in the security office, I reviewed the footage from sub-level B. The video showed me walking down the hall, flashlight in hand. But there was no girl, no gesture. Just me, staring into nothing, speaking to no one. That was the first night I questioned my sanity. The next night, the man in the suit returned. I had just finished locking up the control room after the 2:33 blackout when I saw him on the monitors, standing perfectly still in the main lobby, facing the cameras. He wore the same gray suit, hands clasped behind his back like some bureaucrat, waiting for a late appointment. I approached cautiously, hand on my sidearm. We weren't supposed to carry live weapons, but no one had said anything about non-lethal deterrence. I kept a heavy-duty stun baton in my belt holster. "You're not on the schedule," I said. He turned his head toward me, movements slow and deliberate. "You're adjusting well," he said. "Most don't last this long. You gonna tell me what this place is?" "No," he said simply. "But you're not here by accident, Vaughn." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. I hesitated, then took it. Before I could ask another question, he was gone. No footsteps, no echo, just gone. I unfolded the paper. Addendum to the rules. If you hear your own voice coming from the south wing, do not respond. Do not investigate. Should the red door be open, you must seal it with the emergency lockbox under camera 12. Use the red key, not the black. On the 7th night, the lullaby may repeat. Do not hum it twice. There is now a 5th floor. You may be called to it. Do not enter the elevator. Use the northwest stairwell instead. You are not alone, but the others cannot see you, yet. I stared at the page for a long time. My heart thudded dully in my chest. These rules weren't static. They were evolving, which meant the threats were too. That same night, I was called to the South Wing for the first time. The intercom crackled to life around 2:20 a.m. Security to South Wing Hall C. Possible breach. My blood ran cold. Rule number 1. Do not enter the South Wing. No exceptions. I froze. Was this a test? A trap? The intercom repeated itself, this time louder. Security to South Wing Hall C. Possible breach. This is not a drill. The cameras in the South Wing had always been disabled, grayed out with the words, "No signal," scrawled in red across each screen. But now, one of them, camera 19, flickered to life. Static. Then a frame, a hallway with black and white tile, and something moving at the far end. Too blurry to make out, but it was long, slithering. I shut the monitor off and picked up the internal phone. I didn't dial. I waited. Dead silence. Then the line clicked and I heard breathing, my own voice ragged and panting. "Don't." "Go," it whispered. I hung up and unplugged the phone. Instead of going to the South Wing, I headed to the safe room, a small lead-lined chamber near the generator core behind a triple-locked steel door. I stayed there for the rest of the night, flashlight off, sidearm holstered. The next morning, I found a note slipped under the security office door. "You passed." That day I didn't go home. I didn't sleep. I drove into town looking for answers. At the public records office, I asked about Site 13. The clerk, a pale man with too many teeth and not enough eyebrows, gave me a blank stare. "There's no Site 13, he said. "You mean the old grain processing plant?" "No," I said. "The one in the woods, off Highway 9. Huge building, cameras, steel frame." He blinked. "No such place on record." I checked maps. Nothing. Satellite. Images showed forest. I was being erased. Or maybe I had been inserted into something that wasn't supposed to exist in the first place. Back on shift that night, everything felt different. There were new sounds in the ductwork, Clangs, breathing, scratching. The walls felt too close. The floors seemed to hum beneath my boots. At 1:06 a.m., the knocking came again, but this time it didn't stop after 10 minutes. It followed me, room to room, wall to wall, always 3 knocks, a pause, then 3 more. Jammed earplugs in and kept moving. At 2:33, I turned off the lights. At 2:44, the system flickered back, and the monitors showed a man standing inside the control room. My control room. I spun in my chair, empty. I looked back at the monitor. The man was gone, but now the door to the south wing was open, slightly ajar, just enough to see into the darkness beyond. I went to camera 19. It was disabled again. No signal. I remembered rule number 12. Should the red door be open, you must seal it with the emergency lockbox under camera 12. I rushed to sublevel. B, the red door was open. Beyond it, blackness, not just darkness, but a void. Like someone had carved a hole in the world and forgot to fill it. I grabbed the lockbox, opened it. Inside were 2 keys, one red, one black. Use the red key, not the black. My fingers trembled, but I chose correctly. The red key slid into the panel beside the door, which sealed shut with a heavy thud. Lights above flickered green. Safe. For now. Back in the control room, the intercom came on again. "Good work, Vaughn," said the same robotic voice from my first day. Then silence. That was when I noticed it. The monitors now had a new camera. Camera 67, 5th floor hallway. There was no 5th floor. Not officially. Not until now. The hallway on the screen was impossibly long, hundreds of feet of cold. Tiled floor, walls lined with doors. All identical. Only one door was open, and from within, something was watching me. There's a moment, just before a firefight, where the world slows down. In the core, we called it ghost time. That heartbeat-still, breath-held hush before all hell breaks loose. Staring at camera 67, I felt it again. That same electric stillness. The new feed showed a 5th floor that wasn't supposed to exist. Hallway cold and dead, lit by a string of flickering fluorescents. Dozens of black doors lined the corridor, all sealed shut. Except one. Door 17 stood open. A soft, pulsing red light spilled from within. My first instinct was to shut the feed off and pretend I hadn't seen it. But I couldn't. That door, that hallway, it felt like it had been waiting for me. I reread Rule 14. There is now a 5th floor. You may be called to it. Do not enter the elevator. Use the northwest stairwell instead. So I did. I locked the security office behind me and made my way to the northwest stairwell. I passed level 4, then the landing labeled 5. That label hadn't been there yesterday. The air grew colder as I ascended. It smelled faintly metallic, like old blood and ozone. When I stepped onto the 5th floor, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath misted in front of me. The hallway was identical to the feed. Black tile. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Door 17 stood open, red light flickering like a heartbeat inside. I approached slowly, hand on my sidearm. Not that it would help me here. As I neared the door, I felt off. My limbs moved like they were submerged in thick water. The air pressed down on me. Something ancient and wrong lived in this hallway. Inside door 17 was a room that defied geometry. The walls bent at impossible angles. Gravity shifted. Up felt sideways, and the floor had no texture, like I was walking on thought instead of matter. In the center of the room sat a mirror, not mounted, floating. It reflected the hallway behind me, except there was someone in. It, me, but wrong. His uniform was crisp, too clean, his eyes too wide, his mouth twisted in a smile I've never worn. He raised a hand and waved. I did not. The reflection stepped forward and placed its palm against the glass. A thin, echoing vibration ran through the air. And then, the mirror cracked. Just once. A hairline fracture across its surface like a warning. Ran. I didn't stop until I reached the stairwell, heart pounding like gunfire. As I descended, I could swear I heard footsteps behind me, exactly matching mine. Delayed by 1 beat. That night, I barely made it through the rest of my shift. When morning came, I left without waiting for clearance. I drove back to my apartment, locked the door, and sat in the dark. I didn't sleep. Not really. I dreamed, but they weren't mine. In the dream, I stood inside Site 13, but the walls bled shadow, and something called to me from the red door. A soundless whisper, tugging at the base of my skull. It said, "You've seen it now. You can't go back." When I returned from my next shift, I found something new waiting in the office. A manila envelope, unmarked. Inside were photographs, grainy black and white stills. Each showed me, sleeping, in my apartment, in my truck, even one of me at the VA hospital 6 months ago. They weren't just watching me now. They had been watching me for years. Under the photos was a note. You were chosen. Because you don't. Break. But you will. There were more addendums. Rule 16. The mirror on the 5th floor is not a mirror. Do not touch it. Rule 17. If you dream of Site 13, do not sleep again without sedatives. Rule 18. Should you hear music from the 4th floor, do not investigate. It is not for you. Rule 19. The being in door 17 now knows your name. Speak as little as possible on site. That last one chilled me. It knew me now. That night, everything escalated. The lights in the control room began flickering sporadically. The screens blinked with images not from Site 13, battlefields, foreign cities, faces I remembered from the war. People I watched die. Then the images shifted, flashing stills of me in combat. Then me in the hallway outside the red door. Then, a frame I couldn't remember. Me, opening door 17. I never opened it. Not fully. I don't think I did. At 3:03 a.m., the lullaby began, but this time, it repeated. Rule 13. Do not hum it twice, but it was in my head. I couldn't stop myself. My lips moved. The melody poured out involuntarily, like something inside me was pulling the strings. After the second repetition, I blacked out. I woke up at 5:17 a.m. on the 5th floor, lying in the middle of the hallway. Door 17 was closed, but it had changed. There was a handprint on it, burned into the steel, long-fingered, twisted. Not human, and a message scratched below. Almost ready. Back in the office, I tried to call the man in the gray suit. The number no longer connected, just static. Later that morning, a different man came to the site. Younger, dressed in a pristine white lab coat. He had no name tag. You've breached containment protocol, he said, flipping through a clipboard. Multiple events tied to cognitive bleed. That's not ideal. What the hell is this place? I asked, more tired than angry now. He tilted his head. It's a firewall, between reality and everything else. And me? You're the key holder, or one of them. He looked up from the clipboard. Everything inside this facility has been classified as ontological hazardous material. You're not guarding things. You're guarding ideas, concepts that can bleed, mutate, and infect. And once you've seen them, they see you. That's why the rules exist. They keep the infection contained. I want out. He smiled. Not kindly. We all do. Then he handed me a new envelope and left. Inside was a fresh set of rules. Rule 20. The next time door 17 opens, something will come out. You must not let it speak. Rule 21. If you see yourself in the security office when you enter, leave immediately. Do not engage. Rule 22. You will forget things. Keep notes. Not on site. At home. Rule 23. You may receive a visitor claiming to be your brother. You have no brother. Rule 24. When the final rule arrives, you must choose. Lock the door or open it forever. It was clear now. Site 13 wasn't a facility. It was a seal, and it was wearing thin. That night, the cameras failed. One by one, each feed fizzled into blackness. Only camera 67 remained, 5th floor. Door 17. It was open, and something had stepped out. There's a difference between seeing something and understanding it. I had seen what was inside door 17. Glimpses, reflections, fractured images on security monitors and red glowing thresholds. But when it finally stepped through, when the rules failed, I understood one thing for certain. It was never meant to stay locked forever. The night began like every other. Same login sequence, same system checks, except this time the cameras were dead before I even touched the controls. Only camera 67 worked, and on its screen, door 17 was open. Something stood just outside the frame. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, the same way a rabbit feels the hawk before it dives. I sat there for a long time, breathing slow, willing myself not to blink. Something inside me screamed to run, but there was nowhere left to go. I reached into the drawer beneath the desk. Not for the flashlight, not for the sidearm, for the final envelope. The man in white left it 3 nights ago, sealed in red wax. I hadn't opened it until now. I cracked the seal with numb fingers. Inside were 2 things: a list of the final rule, a photo. The rule read, Rule 25, Final. When the door opens, you will remember the truth. You will have 2 choices. Reseal the breach. Let it consume you and become the next warden. One sustains the world, one ends it. I didn't understand it until I saw the photo. It was an old black and white image, curled at the edges, like it had been handled too many times. The photo showed the interior of Site 13's control room. Not the current one, the original, maybe decades ago. 3 figures stood inside. One was a man in a military uniform, high and tight haircut, square jaw. I recognized him immediately, my father. I blinked. He'd died in 1997, car accident. That's what they told me. But here he was, standing inside Site 13. The back of the photo was scribbled in pencil. Warden 12, breach contained, 1987. Warden. Not guard, not operator. Warden. This place had keepers, and they didn't retire. They succumbed. The door burst open behind me. Wind howled through the control room, cold and sour. I grabbed the stun baton and turned, but no one stood there. Only the hallway, lights flickering, dust floating like ash, and a trail of wet red, footprints leading away from the door. I followed them, down the main corridor, past the security cages, through the flooded maintenance sublevels. The prints glowed faintly, like bioluminescent moss, leading me towards sublevel D, a floor that didn't exist on the blueprints, a floor we were never told about. The keypad to the stairwell blinked red as I approached. I tried my override. It worked. The door hissed open, and I descended into blackness. No lights. No emergency panels. Just the prints, pulsing faintly like embers on stone. I walked for what felt like an hour. The air was thick with rot. Every step echoed louder than the last. Then I heard it. A heartbeat, not mine. Slow, rhythmic, planetary. It wasn't just sound. It was in the walls, the floor, my teeth. Then the hallway opened into a massive chamber, hundreds of feet across. The walls were covered in markings. Runes, maybe. Symbols etched in something darker than paint. In the center of the chamber stood a figure, not a monster. A man. Me. He turned slowly. Same face, same uniform, but his eyes were black voids, and his skin was cracked like porcelain. His voice sounded like mine underwater. "You've come to replace me." "No," I said. "I'm sealing the door." He smiled, too wide. "You can't. It's already inside you." And I realized he was right. From the moment I read the first rule, maybe even before, something had been gestating, watching, crawling behind my eyes. I hadn't avoided corruption. I'd become its next host. But the rules were still rules, and the final rule gave me a choice. I reached into my chest pocket and pulled out the red key, the one from the emergency lockbox, the twin to the one that sealed the red door on sub-level B. "You don't have the strength," the mirror me said. "You don't know me." I stabbed the key into the center of the floor, where the heartbeat pulsed strongest. It sank like a blade into soft flesh. The dead chamber screamed. The air rippled. The walls buckled. The prints flashed white-hot and vanished. The figure let out a shriek of fury and lunged, but dissolved into ash before it reached me. Then the lights went out. When I woke up, I was in the infirmary on level 1. The sterile white lights burned. My eyes, a woman in a lab coat, hovered over me. Her badge read, "Dr. M. Heller." "You made a choice," she said. I nodded weakly. "Did it work?" She didn't answer at first. Then, "You bought us time." She handed me a new envelope. Not sealed, no wax. Just a folded sheet of paper. One line, Warden, 13. Active, my number now. I was the new SEAL. I didn't go home. I couldn't. They assigned me permanent quarters beneath the north wing. A small suite, a bed, a steel desk, and a fresh rule book. This one had hundreds of entries. Some were familiar, most were not. But one rule had been scrawled at the very top in red ink, larger than the others. "Remember who you were. That's how it feeds." Epilogue. You don't understand what it means to hold the line until you realize you are the line. I keep the doors closed. I follow the rules, because I know what happens when you don't. I'm not just a former Marine. I'm not just a night shift guard. I'm the warden of Site 13, and this is my final rule to you. If you find a place with too many cameras, too many locks, and too many rules, leave before it remembers you.